I'm Sheriff Jim DeWees. I oversee the Carroll County Detention Center as well as law enforcement in Carroll County. I'm going to introduce you to Deputy First Class Nick Murphy. He's the intelligence officer for the Carroll County Detention Center, and he keeps track of all the gangs, but we call them security threat groups. We don't necessarily call them gangs. So he keeps track of all the security threat groups within the detention center and throughout the county, and provides me with the intelligence, provides local, state, and federal law enforcement with intelligence on gangs. And some of you are probably thinking we have no gangs in Carroll County. Well, you would be wrong, because we do. Every gang that you can think of resides in this county, and some of them are integral parts in the crime and drug activity that takes place in our communities. So I'm going to introduce Deputy First Class Nick Murphy. He's going to give you guys a briefing on gangs, and it's kind of somewhat what I get, but a little watered down. On a monthly basis, he sits and meets with me. So, Nick Murphy.
How you doing? Just a little bit of a statistic for you. 800,000 recognized gang members in the United States. 33,000 recognized gang, or STGs, as we call them. So what is a gang? What comes to mind? What does a gang member look like? These are all three questions that we're going to answer through this presentation today. It is not illegal to be in a gang. So you cannot be arrested just for being a gang member. It is the activities that gangs are involved with that are illegal and create the problem. Gangs are more persuasive and menacing than any other time in history. If anybody is following the things that are going on in Baltimore City, WBL put the Crips and the Bloods working together on the news. They have very good PR. They talk well. If anybody knows who this is the mayor of Boston, ex-mayor of Boston, holding up B's for Bloods. What he didn't realize is that the three men in the photograph were getting him to make gang hand signs on national television. Rolls right into gangs on TV. If you look at TV nowadays, there are many programs that show gangs doing good things and show gangs as a positive thing to society. This is done to dull the effect gangs have on this community. This is the book definition of a gang. A gang has a minimum of 3 persons in them committing criminal activities. "20% of students 12 to 18 reported street gangs have been present in their school during the previous 6 months. In schools in Carroll County, there have been validated gang members to the juvenile departments. That then gets passed on to the detention center when they become an adult. Youth involved in gangs are 3 to 7 times more delinquent acts as youth not involved in gangs. That number is rising. We have young juveniles who are committing crimes and being charged as adults due to gang involvement. Drugs are an overwhelming problem in all society. As you guys know by looking around the booths in this building and listening to the presentations, this is what draws gangs to the area. Gangs capitalize on this. They look at the drugs as a way to make money. They resort back to violence in order to maintain their drug-controlled areas. The combination is not good for society. It creates a lot of death. 25% of all adult male offenders in Maryland are gang members, and this is a growing number. 8 to 11%, according to the National Youth Gang Center, of gang members are females. Females are an easier group to use when transporting weapons and drugs because they're harder to search for male officers. $9.25 million people are held in the penal system throughout the world. 2.19 million are in U.S. prisons. Gang graffiti. This is a copy of graffiti that was found in the institution. in the Carroll County Detention Center. I did talk, however, with some of the teachers walking throughout. If you have kids, a good place to look for gang graffiti is in the edges of their notebooks, on folders, things like that they have in the classroom. When they get bored and they doodle in the edges of their notebooks, if they're gang members or if they see gang signs a lot, you'll start to notice that those doodles start to turn into gang material. This is also true for treatment programs. Types of security threat groups or gangs. You have your street gangs, which are your Bloods, your Crips, your Latin Kings. You have prison gangs, which are your gangs that primarily operate within correctional institutions such as Dead Man Incorporated, BGF. White supremacy gangs, those are your Aryan Nation, your Aryan Brotherhoods. Outlaw motorcycle and biker groups. These are your Hells Angels, your Pagans, your Mongols. Domestic terrorist, cult groups, and juvenile gangs. Female gang members. Gangs in schools. This is a big one. There are kids who as young as 7 are joining gangs. This is a picture posted on Facebook of a young kid. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a little kid dressed in all red, holding money up. Gang activities and drugs, gambling, extortion, criminal activities, tagging graffiti, territory control, compromising or infiltrating public safety. The big one is the drugs. All right, that's the way they make money. They argue over drug turf. We used to have a larger population of Crips in Carroll County. As of recently, the Crips have started moving out of Carroll County and the Bloods have started moving in. There are 2 sections of Bloods moving in for this drug control. You have the group of Bloods coming out of the city and another group coming from New York. They're fighting with each other, even though they are both Bloods. They fight with each other to gain the drug control. Gambling. This is a heavy population of the institution in Carroll County gamble to pass the time. It is against institutional regulations. Therefore, if they are caught gambling, they can be charged and placed on lock. We do this to control the gangs and control extortion. Extortion, which is our next coverage. These gangs want people to pay to operate in the area the gang controls. Criminal activities. There is a larger and larger group of these gang members coming into the detention center as they start to burglarize homes, sell drugs, and weapons. Tagging and graffiti. This is a big one. They will put marks all over the county. I don't know if some of you guys have seen them, but as you go by bridges, as you see broken down buildings, things like that, if you start noticing tags, which is a drawing, like I showed you earlier, on the wall made with spray paint. This drawing can actually tell us what gang is operating in that area. They will spray paint over another person's drawing to mark it as theirs. When this starts happening more prevalently, this institutes a territory war. Territory control. They want the biggest section of the drug trade. So if there's 2 groups that are arguing over gang territory, you start to get violence. Some of the preferred weapons right now are knives, but there have been cases of guns. Compromising or infiltrating public safety. The gangs have learned that police are starting to monitor them more and more, so they're covering up their tattoos and trying to get people into public safety roles. That's where officers really are concentrating, using things like GangNet, which is a national service that we have joined in the Carroll County Detention Center to monitor gangs all across the Washington-Baltimore area. Reasons for joining a gang: power. Gangs promise people power. They tell them that if they join, no one will bother them and that they will have a stronger role. Identity. Many youth are desperately searching for a place to belong. I talked to a gang member who grew up in the city. At 7 years old, he joined the gang because his family left. They left the city and they left him there. So he was searching for a way to belong, and the only people that would take him in were the gang members. But to join them, he had to sell drugs and carry a gun at 7 years old. Fun and excitement. Living on the edge, participating in dangerous activities. This is one that happens a lot in Carroll County. These youths are going out and they're searching for this fun and this excitement, but then when they get arrested and charged, they find out that it's not fun and exciting to sit in a cell and wait to go to court. And then they want out. But once you're into that point, there's no way out. Intimidation. Many youths join gangs in fear, threats, intimidation of other gang members. This is the way that the Bloods was started. The Bloods were started in 1970 to combat the Crips. This was done because there was a group of small gangs who banded together and created the Bloods because they were worried about the Crips. Shock. They want to shock their families, they want to shock their friends, so they join gangs. So parents, if you notice a big change in your child, you might want to start looking at their drawings and the clothing that they're wearing. Low self-esteem. The gang members know who to prey on to get someone to do what they want. They know to go after the low self-esteem individuals because those are the ones that they can get to do what they want without having to do anything for them. They want to belong. Academic problems. When students don't feel like they can make any progress in school, they start looking for other ways to make money. They start looking for other ways to belong. And that's when you start getting into the gangs, because the gangs make them feel like they belong somewhere. They make them feel like they're doing something positive. Some gangs are formed alongside racial lines, such as Mexican Mafia, white supremacy, Asian, Vietnamese gangs. The white supremacy falls heavy under race. A lot of these guys have their parents who belong to these white supremacy gangs, and then they fall right into it because the hatred is taught to them from a very young age. This also happens with BGF, which is the Black Guerrilla family. In prisons, they come home and they start teaching the hatred to the children for the other races. Religion. Some groups and gangs are organized and formed along religious lines, such as Aryan Nation and Wiccan. Aryan Nation falls under the Nordic gods. They use this to preach the hate within their gangs. Gang initiation, a rite of ceremony, instructions of which are made members, sex and society, invested with the gang. Gangs use initiation as a right to determine inductees and mentally and physically strong enough and worthy for membership. In gangs, there are different roles people play. Some are financial roles, some are physical, threatening roles, and some are leader roles. Your initiation can be what they view you as in the gang. Fight with one or more gang members until a candidate proves devotion. They will physically beat somebody for 30 seconds to a minute to prove that they really want into the gang. Engage in active violence such as robbery, drive-by shootings. They want them to commit a crime so that they know they are in the gang permanently, because they can then hold that crime over that person forever. If you commit a crime for the gang and the gang knows about it, they then have you on a hook forever because you have committed crime in the name of the gang. Vandalism of property, burglaries against police officers. This is a big one. Acts against police officers right now in the city. Burglarization of police officers' homes, steal firearms. Hold and conceal guns or narcotics for the gang. Sell drugs, again, criminal element. They're doing these crimes so they have something to say that you will commit a crime for the gang. You will act within the gang and what they want. Run the gauntlet of being beaten by gang members. A flipping member is one that goes from one gang to another. So to show loyalty to that gang, they will have them commit an act of violence against the old gang. That way they can never go back. And it proves to them that they are not working for the gang that they are leaving. They are now working for the gang that they are joining. There was a big one, I don't know if anyone saw it, in the news about the run up and punch people and try and knock them out. That was going on in New York and such. Gangs will use that as a way of initiation. It's assault against a non-gang member. Females. This is one that hits home for anyone who has a daughter. They will roll a dice and decide how many gang members they need to have relations with. Sometimes knowing the person that has HIV to prove loyalty to the gang. Common gang identifiers and symbols. Symbols, tattoos, graffiti, language, writings, dress and colors, show dress, hand signs. These are some of the hand signs for different gangs. Indicators of gang affiliation. The hats on the bottom. On the left you see a gold New York hat with a crown. That's Latin Kings. The next one is blue. That's Crips. Red, Bloods. There's no reason for these companies to make these hats other than to support the gangs. Change in dress habits. If you start noticing that your children start wearing the same color every day, start wearing the same monikers every day, that's a good identifier. Change in friends. If you start noticing your children's friends all of a sudden change and you start seeing these hats and things like that. Tattoos. They don't have to go to a shop to get tattooed. Many gangs have tattoo artists within the gangs who will put these tattoos on children. They do it within the prisons and they do it when they get out. They'll have what they call a tattoo party when they get out and start putting these labels on kids and people who want to join the gang. How to read graffiti. It's a representation of symbols. If you start seeing graffiti in your neighborhoods, on your child's stuff, take photos of it. Talk to the officers. If you send that to the detention center, we'd be happy to look at it. We look for these things. We work on finding them. But we need the photographs. We need these things. So if you find it, we have a booth right over here. You can come get my card. I'd be happy to take a look at it. Know your area. If you start seeing signs all over the area that were not there over the last couple months, that means somebody new is coming to town. If you start seeing more secretive behavior, if they're hiding stuff, if they're going out and not telling you who they're with, these are identifiers. Money from unknown places. If your kid doesn't have a job and they start having hundreds of dollars, something's not adding up. Carrying of a weapon. Now, a lot of people think this means guns. It doesn't always mean guns. It could be anything from a stick they keep in their book bag, a knife they keep in their pocket, things like that. Lack of interest in family and school. Arrested or detained by law enforcement. If your child starts showing up in the custody of law enforcement, a good tool now, guys, is Facebook. Facebook can tell you a lot about the changing habits of their friends. Don't just look at their Facebook, but you can also look at their friends' Facebook for changes in their behavior. One indicator alone does not mean your child is a gang member or that their friends are. But if you start noticing things, keep an eye on if they have more and more indicators. Because as they start to add up, you can start to really see a change in the behavior. As of June 11th, most active gangs in and around Carroll County: Black Guerrilla Family, Bloods, Crips, Dead Man Incorporated, and Latin Kings. The Bloods and the Crips, as I talked about earlier, the Crips have moved. There are some still in the western part of the county, some still in Westminster. The Bloods have started coming up from Baltimore and down from New York. Dead Man Incorporated are mostly individuals who go to prison, join there, and then come back from prison. This is some of your photographs of different tattoos. This little boy over here has a gun tucked in his pants. Denial. The public and the institutions have denied gang activity for a long time. Nobody wants to move somewhere where there's gang activity. But until you start admitting that there's gang activity, you can't address the problem. politics, ignorance, and profit. Strategies for prevention and intervention. Acknowledge the problem. Realize there is one. If it's your child that has the issue, don't be afraid to confront it. Assess the problem. That's what the local law enforcement's for. Schools, to talk to and find ways to properly identify and address these problems and act on the problem. So what is a gang? 3 or more people acting in a criminal behavior. What comes to mind? A gang member can be anybody, right? What does a gang member look like? Not the little kid on the motorcycle. Is it a gang or an organization? This is one that they started calling themselves organizations. And I don't know if anyone notices this, but if you start watching what they call themselves, they are very good at PR. Calling themselves an organization makes them much more approachable, but they're really just a gang. Any questions? I can't hear. Oh, this thing's got to go. They'll hang the shoes on the wire if someone is dead. That's a picture out of Los Angeles. They'll hang the shoes on the wire. That indicates that they did kill somebody. It's normally the person who died's shoes. So that's where that picture comes from. Unless a lot of times the guys do that to mock, or not mock, but act like they're in LA. Unless there's been a recent homicide, no. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for your time.